Good morning, students. Today we are going to learn a very important topic, and that is ocean currents. It is not only important, it is also a very interesting topic. Now, what are ocean currents? Ocean currents are just like rivers in the oceans, which flow from one part of the ocean to another. Let us learn the definition of ocean currents. Ocean currents are the regular movement of water from one part to another in a defined direction. Direction is very defined in the surface of an ocean, and it is known as an ocean current. Another very important part of the definition is they are generated mainly due to two important variations. Two factors are important for the generation of ocean currents. They are temperature and salinity. Now, before we learn in detail about the ocean currents, let us learn a few more terms. For example, drifts, currents, and streams. Now, what are drifts? Drifts are the forward and slow movement of currents caused due to winds. So, winds are causing the movement of the water. And a very good example of a drift is the North Atlantic drift. Now, what is a current? Current is slightly different in the sense that it is an oceanic water which is moving in a definite direction. Both the South Equatorial and North Equatorial current is known as a current. About this, I am going to talk in detail in the later part of the lesson. Another very important term which you need to learn is a stream. What is a stream? It is the movement of a large mass of oceanic water resembling like a big river. It moves very fast, ranging from 6 to 10 kilometers per hour. And the best example of a stream is the Gulf Stream, about which we are going to study in detail in the later part of the lesson. Now, as far as types of ocean currents are concerned, there are basically two types of currents. They are warm ocean currents and cold ocean currents. Now, these warm and cold ocean currents, they develop or they emerge from two different parts of the earth. Now, let us see how. Now, here in this map, you can see the movement of the currents. So, all those currents which are generated from the equator on either side, they are known as the equatorial current. The one which generates in the north is known as the North Equatorial Current, and the one which generates in the south is known as the South Equatorial Current. You can see it over here. And they are all warm currents. Why are they warm currents? Because they are generating at the equator, which is the warmest part of the earth. the cold ocean currents generate from the polar areas and they move towards the south in the northern hemisphere. In the southern hemisphere, they move from the south to the north, somewhat like this. So, we have currents which are coming from the north, which are cold currents, and the currents which are moving from the central part of the earth to the north are known as the warm currents. Now, what are the causes of the currents? As far as the causes of the currents are concerned, the planetary winds are the most important cause of the current. Now, here you can see that because of the spinning of the earth, the winds get curved and these winds blow regularly in a definite and a particular direction throughout the year. The wind system of the world compels the surface water of the ocean to flow in a particular direction. The second important cause is the variation in temperature of the ocean water. So, everywhere we do not find the same type of temperature. From this particular map, you can see some areas are having very high temperature while other areas are having very low temperature. The blue areas over here, it shows low temperature, while the orange areas over here show high temperature. Now, because of this, that is due to the unequal heating, sets up convectional current. So, convectional currents get set up over here, and as a result, there is a movement of water in this region. So, the density of water near the equator is over here. So, the density of water near the equator decreases due to very high temperature, and warm water near the equator becomes light, expands and flows towards the higher latitude. So, they flow towards the higher latitude in the form of warm currents. Here we have the equator. I am drawing it again because the equator is very warm, and from here we have the warm currents. They begin to move towards the northern and southern part, thereby taking the warm water from the central part of the earth towards the north and the south. So, temperature variation in the ocean water leads to the occurrence of currents. The third most important cause is the variation in salinity of ocean water. Now, we all know that ocean waters are highly saline. and therefore there is, in some parts there is a high salinity, while in some parts the salinity is very low. So places where rivers, like here the Mississippi River comes and flows through America, United States, and falls into the Gulf of Mexico. You can see over here, this area is having a very light color, which is an indication that the salinity is pretty low. Here also you can see the mouth of the Amazon. The Amazon starts from the Andes and flows over here, and a large amount of fresh water is added over here. And here also we find that the salinity is very low. So it indicates that amounts of salts contained in the ocean water varies in different parts of the ocean. Water having high salinity is always denser. Here we can see the Mediterranean Sea having a very high density of salinity. So, due to high density, the high saline water tends to subside and move below the water of low salinity. That is, water will always move from high salinity towards areas of low salinity. The next important cause of ocean currents is rotation of the earth and the Coriolis force. Now, the earth is rotating at a very great speed. Due to this, a force begins to act on the earth, which is known as the Coriolis force. Now, Coriolis force deflects the ocean currents in a clockwise direction in the northern hemisphere and in an anti-clockwise direction in the southern hemisphere. That means all ocean currents will move towards the right in the northern hemisphere and towards the left in the southern hemisphere. Besides this, the configuration of the coastlines also makes the configuration of the coastline also results in the causes of the ocean currents. So, wherever the configuration is very, that is, it is very less indented, that is, it does not have much bends, the ocean currents will move very smoothly. While wherever there is a bend, it will lead to a lot of movement and changes in the movement of the ocean or the direction of the ocean currents. Now, as far as the effects of ocean currents are concerned, ocean currents lead to a large number of effects. One such effect is the climate. That is, ocean currents tend to modify the climate of a region. For example, here we have the North Atlantic Drift. Now, the North Atlantic Drift is a very warm current and it reaches right up to the island of the United Kingdom. Now, this North Atlantic Drift is responsible in increasing the temperature of this island even during times of severe winter. Why? Because it is carrying a huge amount of warm water. On the contrary, the Labrador Current, which is a cold current, tends to decrease the temperature of all these areas even though they are lying in the same latitude. So, the warm current over here, that is the North Atlantic Drift, tends to increase the temperature of the areas of the United Kingdom, while in the same latitude in Canada, due to the presence of the cold Labrador Current, the temperature remains very cold and the ports remain ice-bound almost 6 to 8 months a year. Winds which move over warm currents tend to pick up moisture as they pass over them and can bring a cooling effect in the adjoining areas. For example, here we have a cold current which is known as the Peruvian current. Is known as the Peruvian current, which is a cold current. Now, winds which move over these cold currents, they bring a cooling effect in these areas. However, because these winds are moving over cold currents, they do not bring rainfall, and that is why we have the Atacama Desert over here, which is a very dry desert. Elsewhere, we find that when warm and cold currents meet, they create a lot of fog. Here, the Gulf Stream and the Labrador Current meet, and there is a lot of fog near the Newfoundland. You all must have heard about the famous ship called Titanic. Now, this ship got submerged, wrecked, because of the fog which was created due to the warm Gulf Stream and Labrador Current meeting over here. Not only that, the Labrador Current also brings a lot of icebergs, which are also very dangerous for the ships which are traveling in this particular region. Elsewhere, we find that wherever cold currents are coming, they bring a lot of plankton. For example, the cold Oyashio, which is moving from the Kamchatka Peninsula towards Japan, bring a lot of plankton, and that is why a lot of fishes are found in this particular region. Similarly, this area also has got large number of fishing grounds, mainly because of the cold Labrador Current, which is responsible for bringing plankton, which is food for fishes. And that is why the Grand Banks over here is a place where we find a lot of fishes. Next, we must learn about the most important currents. Now, the 5 most important currents are the Gulf Stream, the North Atlantic Drift, the Labrador Current, the warm Kuroshio, and the cold Oyashio. Though I have talked to you about most of these, especially the Gulf Stream, the North Atlantic Drift, and the Labrador Current, still we have to learn in detail about these 5 currents. Now let us learn about them. Now the Gulf Stream is the strongest current, and it is found over here. And it is found over here. It is a continuation of the North Equatorial Current, and hence it is a warm current. This is one of the strongest water. We have the Gulf of Mexico over here, and it moves into the Gulf of Mexico and moves further towards the east before moving like a drift towards the European continent. Now this Gulf Stream originates at around 20-degree latitude, somewhere over here. It flows northwards in an along the east coast of America. Near Newfoundland, I've already told you about it. Near Newfoundland, its water gets mixed with the cold water of the Labrador Current. The Labrador Current comes from here and it gets mixed over here. And a lot of fog occurs over here, which is very, very dangerous for the navigation of ships. Next, we come to the North Atlantic Drift. At around approximately 40-degree north, somewhere over here where New York is, the Gulf Stream comes under the influence of the rotation of the earth and the westerly winds. Let's remember that the westerlies are flowing in this direction. And so the North Atlantic Drift comes into existence. Its speed decreases as it gradually widens. It becomes very wide and its speed becomes less. It is very prominent, and after reaching near Europe, it branches out into 3. One goes towards the north, that is Scandinavia. We have the Scandinavian countries over here. One moves towards United Kingdom, and another moves like this as the cold Canary Current. Now the cold Labrador Current is a current which originates from the Arctic Ocean, and it flows between Greenland and the Baffin Islands. Islands is over here. So it is moving down between Greenland and Baffin Islands. The current merges with the Gulf Stream. I've already told you about it. And they are responsible for the deposition of plankton, and also they are all responsible for the cause of fog over here. Two very important ocean currents are found in the Pacific Ocean. One is the warm Kuroshio, which is found on the western part of Japan, and another one is the cold Oyashio, which is coming from the north and is found in the eastern part of Japan. Now, the warm Kuroshio is a very important current in the Pacific region. The Kuroshio current develops partly due to the Coriolis force, due to the gyration of the Earth. It moves at an average speed of about 30 kilometers per day, and its average temperature is about 20 degrees centigrade. It modifies the temperature of the eastern coast of Japan and Hokkaido and Honshu, that is the topmost island of Japan, that is Hokkaido and Honshu. They, in spite of being at a very high latitude, they are found to have a moderating influence due to the presence of the Kuroshio current. While the cold Oyashio current, which comes from the north, flowing southwards from the Kamchatka Peninsula. This is the Kamchatka Peninsula. It brings cold water and icebergs from the Arctic along the coast of Russia. It gets divided into two branches at 45-degree latitude. Now, ocean currents are very important for us because due to them, the entire Earth is having a temperature which is moderated. Otherwise, had they not been there, then the central part of the Earth near the equator would have become very hot and the poles would have become very, very cold. So ocean currents are of great importance for mankind, not only for bringing about a temperature change, but also for several other purposes. That is what we have enough time for today. Thank you.